All right, everybody, let's get going. Welcome to this trade pending webinar. We've got it entitled Learn from a Rookie. This is actually going to be one of the better webinars that we've held in a long time. They're all fantastic, right? But this one's going to be great because it's a great story. We've got Mason McFalls from Kraft Nissan here, and let's get going. So talking right here, Matthew Davis, Chief Marketing Officer at TradePending, and Mason, you're on the line as well. Don't forget to unmute. Hey, Mason.
How's it going, Matt? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So like every webinar, we will record this, we'll share it out afterwards. And if you have a question, use the Q&A button in Zoom and we'll take your questions at any time. We're really just gonna spend this time hearing Mason's story and what he's been doing and where he's going next. And yeah, that's really the total summary agenda. So we're gonna start with where he's been and how he ended up in automotive, and then spend some time really drilling into how they've been really effective at driving leads, not only through email marketing, but across their entire dealership. And then really spend some time talking through this digital transformation that they're leading everybody to. And so with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's just get going with this thing. So Mason, tell us, who do you work for? What do you do? And how did you end up in automotive?
So I actually moved to Tallahassee about a year ago. I worked for Kraft Nissan and Infinity of Tallahassee, and I actually ended up in the automotive industry by chance. I have a history and background in kind of working in the financial product and sales space. Kind of cut my teeth in doing cold calling in Atlanta, where working for Morgan Stanley, they were having us do like 300 cold calls a day. So got really comfortable with the phone really quickly. And then figured out that my strength was actually in digital whenever I moved to Philadelphia and worked with a company there in private equity. And what I really enjoyed doing was going in with companies and taking really an inventory of what they were doing, and then figuring out how to maximize capacity on what the resources that they had and how to cut down spending and maximize efficiency. And that was where I really kind of fell in love with helping smaller businesses out in that area. And so I came to Tallahassee just honestly to get away from COVID. In Atlanta, when the city went full lockdown, I decided that, I kind of wanted out of the city, wanted slow lockdown. I have family that lives here in the South. So I came here and I was just looking for something to do in my kind of spare time, to keep myself from going crazy. And then I got connected to Kraft Nissan, Phil Solicita, the general manager here. We hit it off and then spent several months asking questions. And now I'm kind of the digital lead for Kraft Nissan.
Yeah, so I think you really took a quick and condensed approach there to your time at Kraft Nissan. So talk us through what you've done there so far in the 9-10 months that you've been there.
Yeah, so whenever I started, I was actually, I'm comfortable with the phone. So I was doing just outbound sales calls, trying to drive appointments. And then, I think that my numbers were kind of speaking for themselves. And so I got invited. And then the more that they figured out that I knew how to speak the tech lingo and the digital lingo, they started inviting me in more and more meetings whenever vendors were presenting and things of that nature. And then I was actually talking back and forth, asking questions. Mostly I was trying to understand what the provider was giving to us and what we were getting for our money. And I didn't realize that I was asking questions that it was just kind of sit back and let's just let this product relax before. I was trying to get to the bottom of how efficiently we could use those products. And then the more I asked questions, the more they just put me and said, hey, you do the webinars, you do the presentations, and you handle these vendors and let us know kind of where you think is a good direction ahead.
Yeah, and so that's hitting upon a point, is that the theme of this webinar is that we're oversimplifying, but anyone can come into automotive and be successful. So what were some of those other skills that you found really translated well from your previous career to where you are now? You mentioned phones, certainly, but there's got to be more.
Oh, yeah. I think that the one that translated the best is email strategy. Whenever you're doing a mass email marketing, it doesn't really change across the board if you break it down to the simplistic base nature of it. The two things that you have to take advantage of is basic email marketing and then customer relationship management software. Most companies that I went into, and I've been in all kinds of spaces, the oil and gas space, I've been in air tech, a bunch of different spaces, but no one seems to really have a full grasp on their CRM. which is why a lot of companies will outsource to different companies like Salesforce and things to have someone just to manage that CRM, because they start to realize that they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of customers with data points everywhere that they're not taking advantage of, and they're not actually like going into and using the basic email campaign coupled with the knowledge of the CRM, and just basically not paying for what they could do themselves.
Right. So you had a lot of success with email marketing. So we're going to kind of shift topics here, especially the past few months. And that's, actually you've had a lot of success across all lead flow there, but what kind of numbers have you been seeing?
Just from the email marketing that I do every month that I kind of manage for our dealership, we've been seeing over 500 leads a month, just from the email marketing that I'm doing. And I'm talking about people that are submitting, asking us to call them, trying to submit for trade-in data, which I've found that TradePending is the quickest, easiest tool for them to use. That was one of the primary reasons that I went with TradePending in addition to the others. But I found that, just the basic email marketing can produce a third of your lead bucket every single month, and you don't have to pay anything extra for it.
Right. What does that type of volume require you to change or to adapt to your processes, your structure, or your talent pool?
So my opinion about BDC agents is that they're better in quality than they are in quantity. I've got 2 agents, and I expect them every month to have 125 shows that they mark in their books and 50 sold each. And I know that the national running average is about 50 shows and 30 sold, and that's like kind of hitting on high check marks. But what I've found by working, kind of in the beginning of my stage of my career with 300 cold calls a day, is you won't get the quality until you put in the quantity work, and then they start improving. And then if you ask for more, you'll get more. So whenever they came in, I told them right out of the gate that these were my expectations of the agents, because as they became more knowledgeable and I was going to help them along the way, that they were going to become better agents. So I've been having to staff more of our department because we're trying to hire quality agents. So it takes a little bit longer, but I'd rather do that than have someone burn a bunch of great leads by not knowing how to do the very basic intro steps of the call.
Right. And what would you say those basic intro steps are? How are you charting things out for your team?
So I, right out of the gate, and this may be simplistic, but I have them get a bunch of yeses before they get a no. So what I found with BDC agents, from being one and then, kind of managing a team of them, is that as they start in calls, they're mostly nervous. They just want to go ahead and say, hey, let me get the appointment as fast as I can because that's my objective. And they don't know that they kind of have to get the customer on their side first, or stop the objections, or get through all the objections. So I asked them a bunch of basic questions that will start getting them thinking the customer, and say, oh, what kind of condition is your car in? Or, I saw that you put in a trade value. Are you looking to trade anytime in the near future? Is there a reason that you're looking to change? Something that gets the customer talking versus, hey, when would you like to bring that by and let us give you a value on it? And then I also try to make it as professional, but as personal as I can from the experience, to where they reference people on their call. Hey, we're going to have our pre-owned lot manager, Lee Davis, take care of this for you. Let me know what time you can come by. They mentioned somebody's name. They're not going to have the customer feels like they're not going to have to wait as long. There's just a lot of little tricks and little tips that I could give on the front end of calls. But for the most part, as long as you get the customer talking, they're already interested in trading in their vehicle. They've already submitted that interest. That you have the interest level. You just don't want to lose it.
Got it. What are some of the fundamentals to have in place before you start, or to have like tidy email marketing, right? If you're going to do it, what's kind of the base level?
You have got to clean up your vendors, and you've got to clean up who's all your CRM and who's all reaching out to that audience. So one of the first things that I did when I came into the dealership was almost took an audit of where all of our leads were in the process, who's reaching out to them, how much access the salespeople have to each of those customers, how often they're being called, how often they're being emailed, and also the scripts that were put in place whenever they were reached out to. And then I basically just kind of put everything on halt for a while and just let that customer base kind of sit for a minute while I cleaned up the data behind the scenes in the CRM. And then I started doing a weekly email to them that was very clean. You don't want a lot of text or excuse me, you don't want a lot of images or videos in your email unless you're working with a company that you know is not going to have you end up in spam. The more simplistic your emails are, the less likely you are to end up in spam. And then over my career, I've discovered that the subject line is worth its weight in gold over the text body, because if they never open your email, then they're never going to see what you had to tell them anyway. So I've played with all of these things, and most of the answers to your questions are just sitting back and analyzing the numbers and taking a look at it. Like, I can work out what I think is the best BDC agent script that I think possible. But if I just ride with it and think, you know, this is going to be great, and I don't have them report to me back daily on kind of their numbers with how successful that's being, and then I measure it over any given period of time, then I'm not going to know how to make adjustments. I'm not going to know where they're hitting roadblocks. I'm not going to know where the customer is basically throwing up a wall and that's it. Without keeping a daily monitoring of these numbers, there's just no way for me to know that data. And that's what I do very well, I think, is I keep a close monitor on the data, and I change it as the market changes, as the timeliness of it changes, and as the effectiveness changes.
Got it. When you mentioned auditing your vendors, what did that look like and how long did it take?
Oh, that was a painstaking process. So that's a lot. So for me, not knowing anything about the automotive industry, I had to do a lot of webinars. I had to do a ton of meetings. I started every single one of my webinars, though, by whenever they call in, I'd say, hey, we're implementing a new process. I need you to email me exactly what you're pitching, how many leads you think we're going to get, what you think the ROI is going to be, and what is the cost, and what all are you providing for this cost. Like, I would have them email me as much as possible, because the one thing that they're trained to do, and good for them, they're trained to convince you to use their product on a webinar or on a 20-minute presentation. It's what that person is trained to do. But if I found that if I just disrupted that flow, and I had them kind of go off the beaten path and email me kind of answers to my questions, and I went back and forth via email, then I could look at things more objectively and ask the right questions and not get caught on like a presentation that, you know, sounds like all rainbows and sunshine. And then you hire the product, and then all of a sudden it doesn't deliver. And then they're like, oh, well, it worked for everyone else. Well, that would just be because I didn't ask the right questions.
Right. When you mentioned cleaning up your CRM and your database, what were you cleaning up and how did you go about it?
For the most part, that just requires kind of a motivation of the sales people, because they're the ones that are entering in the data on that. For the most part, we weren't getting lead sourcing right. We weren't getting data on the customer, like just a basic phone number or an email address. And the more that you can show the salespeople the power of what happens whenever you use your CRM properly, the more likely they are to put that data in there. That was the biggest component of it, was making sure that the data that was being put in was correct. But if you have data in your CRM that's update and accurate information, it allows you to use this wonderful thing called merge codes. And that is what allows you to really personalize the email. I know a lot of people don't know what merge codes are. So there's, if you can explain it if you'd like, but also merge codes are basically whenever I can type an email and make it sound very, very personal, just by using accurate data points like, hey, customer first name would be the merge code. And then all of a sudden, every single customer in my CRM that's going to get that email, it's going to update that email with their first name. And then I will also change it to things like using their vehicle, so having accurate data on what they're trying to trade in, having accurate data on what they're looking for, having accurate data in where they live. I can customize the email to the user experience without putting a whole lot of effort in on my part, just by learning how to use simple merge codes and having the CRM data up to date.
What processes or incentives are you putting in place now to try to make sure that that stays up to date, moving and accurate moving forward?
The process is whenever we get a lead in, my BDC agents, as they're calling out now, after some time, we've taken over the initial reach out to every single customer. And so as they're reaching out to everyone, they're using all the data that they can. They're trying to collect cell phone numbers. They're trying to collect accurate emails. They're trying to collect the data that we need, because then we realize that we can reach out to this customer from several different avenues. We can call them, we can text them, we can email them. Now, obviously, you don't want to do all three of those at once or do a ton of this at one time. You want to have a very detailed plan in how you plan to roll this out. So my BDC agents, they know that generally speaking, if they don't hear from somebody with a phone call, there's no reason to even leave a voicemail. Nobody checks voicemails anymore. It's a rare thing. So they immediately follow up with a text message that is catered to people that don't like to answer the phone. Like, I have text message templates built out to say things such as, hey, we just tried to reach you, but we realized that talking over the phone isn't really kind of what some of our customers prefer. Would you like to text me? I'd love to know more about your trade-in. And most of the time we get yes, right? And they respond right away, like as if they weren't by their phone the whole time. So it's just meeting the customer where they are in the process and really trying to cater your approach to them. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you. Going back to something you mentioned before too. So you mentioned you try to keep your emails simple, clean, very little images, very little text, which might seem contradictory. Like, usually you're trying to make things splashy. I certainly do that with our marketing emails, right? But what did you see the difference was in terms of either deliverability or opens, clicks, et cetera? Because you ended up here for a reason. What happened?
So I've realized that just over 10 plus years of email marketing, that people just really want to get to the point. And the more that we have, like 70% of our user base is using their phone. And if it takes them a while to scroll to get to where they're going, or if they have to click on things to allow images to load, like for the most part, if you put a video, or if you embed, or if you attach a video, or if you attach an image, then they have to trust the user content from that source. I don't even want to give the customer that step or that hoop to have to go through. I figure out something that's very timely, very urgent, and sounds very personal. And I do just a couple of lines, maybe one paragraph, and then a couple just bullet points, and then I send it out. And I found that customers just in general, I tried to email them the way that I'd like to be emailed, which is keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it to the point, and let me know what you want me to do. The subject line is the enticing factor. The subject line is such as, I've used subject lines like, your vehicle is worth more than you think, or here's an offer for your car, or just things that are like, oh, hey, I wonder what this is all about. From what I've found in my history of just email marketing, just a fun fact, the most open subject line of all time is follow-up. If you can find a way to, and that's kind of a tricky method that I use whenever I was marketing, is that if I tried to call that customer, if I tried to text that customer, or if I tried any method of reaching out, then I can use the subject line follow-up, which to me is more valuable than the initial call. Because right. Then I'm saying follow-up, they're opening, say, hey, tried to reach you, left a voicemail. Here's what I was trying to call you about. Here's a link where you can value your trade, or here's the link where you can do this. My call wasn't even about the call. If I got them on the line, great. But if I didn't, that was even better, because then I knew that my next move was going to be to email that customer using the subject line follow-up. And so I just, like I said, you just got to analyze the numbers as you do it. As you do your email marketing and you notice that you have a high bounce rate, maybe try using less images, or try using less links, or because it just means that the customer's not getting to where they need to go. And so they're unsubscribing, or they're just opting out. So try to get them to where you want them to go as quickly as possible. And that's the same kind of approach that I've taken with our website, is to eliminate the noise. You can use sales and marketing and, banner ads and things when they're appropriate. For example, when you're hiring vendors, we started eliminating vendors, and then I decided to partner with a technology company that would track VIN numbers and track users that search VIN numbers, and then do Facebook ads based on that. Now, everybody expects to see Facebook ads. Everybody expects to see Amazon ads. But where you don't want to see ads anymore are on the websites where you're trying to get information, or in the email that you're receiving from the group that you trusted with your email. You expect to see ads on social media. It's no longer really expected to see it within the marketing that you receive, even though it's marketing.
Yeah. So quick step back here. We're speaking with Mason McFalls from Kraft Nissan. He has been absolutely crushing it in terms of just driving inbound leads, first party. We have time for questions. We're going to move on to our next topic, but please, if you have questions, type them in the Q&A. We'll take them as we go. So we're going to shift gears here, talk more about digital transformation. So is it fair to say that Kraft Nissan is undergoing a digital transformation? What does that even mean, and how are you going about it?
Yeah, it seemed like just kind of like the lucky matching of stars almost, that whenever I came in to join Kraft Nissan, that Phil Solicito, the manager, he was actually interested in heading in that direction and really cleaning up everything as well. I'm not sure if he knew exactly who he had in mind, or if it just lucked up that it ended up being me. But we went everything. If your, like I was saying, if your email or if your website experience isn't a research-based experience, to where if they go, they can find the information that they need on the vehicle, they can scroll as quickly as possible. If you don't know the data and how people are looking, if you don't know that your audience is 65% mobile or 70% mobile, then it's really hard for you to construct the right digital approach to your audience. So with Tallahassee being more of a southern town, obviously, than Atlanta, and being more of a, it's not what you know, it's a who you know, until COVID hit. And then COVID changed everything. Now, everybody who wasn't looking to take a digital approach to this has given it a second thought. And it kind of made Kraft Nissan reconsider everything from the digital approach. And that's kind of how we ended up where we are today. It was that they wanted a big push. They wanted to consolidate vendors. They wanted to cut costs. And they wanted to get the most bang for our buck in terms of where we were heading from our digital marketing. But I also believe that we should make it a cleaner, much more user-friendly experience. Marketing, I feel like, whenever for dealerships, used to be based on, whoever had the best ads, or whoever had the best banners, or whoever had the best thing. Any given number of these marketing things, that's who drove the most leads. Now, I think with how many users use sites for research, it's whoever has the best user experience and whoever has the best customer experience when buying the first vehicle or the second vehicle is going to eventually retain the market. I also believe that the customer acquisition cost is much higher than people think it is. So once you get that customer, you want to hold on to them. So we've changed a lot of our philosophy and a lot of everything and how we're doing it at Kraft Nissan to more cater to the customer versus just trying to drive. I mean, we're obviously trying to drive leads as well, but we're trying to drive quality. And then once we get them, hold on to them through just, a first-class experience the whole way.
You mentioned you've done quite a shift and change in terms of your email marketing, but how has that same type of philosophy rippled out through your paid ads, through traditional spend across TV, radio, print? What's changing there, or what will change?
Yeah, so traditional ads almost flipped on its head. It used to be like 60, 70% traditional, and then they were pushing some into digital. And with everyone, like I said, with COVID really turning everything on its head, like that really flipped the market in a quicker way than I think the market was expecting. Was it turned everything from traditional over to digital, especially with streaming audio. I mean, it's interesting because when you talk with people in the market about when's the last time they listened to such radio station, they'll ask you, oh, do you mean Spotify? Do you mean such and such? So everything else switching digital, you're just trying to keep up with the market and make sure that you're spending advertising where people are. Another thing that I switched up was there were a lot of companies, and this is a point that I wanted to make. I meant to make it at the beginning, but be very careful of paying for the same data twice. So a lot of marketing companies, if you'll just ask one question and ask them, where do you source your data, or where do you get your data from? And then they have to kind of let you know what's their parent company or the company that provides them the data. You may have other vendors that you're using that have data from the same market, from the same like big public company that's selling you the same data in just a different way. So if you can buy the data once and utilize it as much as you can, that is the best route. There are plenty of ways to get that data and to get it without having to pay for it twice. But in my opinion, the CRM is the first and foremost place you could go because you already own the data. And if you can figure out how to replicate what the person is doing, then you may not need it as much as you thought you did.
When you talk about going through a digital transformation, and there's definitely a theme here that you're trying to maximize the vendors that you work with today to the full capacity. What does that mean to you?
To me, that means figuring out what all the vendors provide. Like if you're working with a local shop, like it doesn't mean that anybody is, in my opinion, better or worse than the others if you ask the right question. If they're a smaller shop, they may be willing to work with you more, give you more for free, or give you more of these services as bang for your buck. If they're a larger shop, they have all of these packages that unless you ask the questions, you don't know what all they provide. And also it's an educational opportunity in what I found for myself. As I was going through the webinars and I was learning through what each and every vendor presented, I started seeing some similarities and themes about which vendors provided. Then I could start doing a cost comparison. So I feel like a lot of dealerships, and this was something that I had to notice, they really look at vendors as, will it pay for itself? And that's the question that they ask themselves. They say, if I hire them and they get me 3 sales a month or 10 sales a month or 50 sales a month, will it pay for itself? I started realizing through all the webinars that I was going through that the dealerships weren't calculating the opportunity cost. So the opportunity of selecting one vendor over another, yes, this vendor might very well pay for itself, but this other vendor offered to provide me with these services as well, which is going to translate and help in my marketing in these capacities. And it's going to triple what this one's going to do for the same cost. And if I hadn't have taken the time to go into and research the different vendors, research where they're taking money from, where they're suggesting you spend money, what all packages and services they provide, what each one of those packages and services entail. If I didn't ask the right questions and go through just almost from understanding it from a brand new perspective, then I may never have gotten those answers. And that's kind of how I approached it.
And that's how we got to know you, through sitting through some of our content and then working with our regional sales manager, David Lowitz.
Yeah, that's another thing I can say is take advantage of people like David Lowitz. I can't tell you the number of times that I've emailed David and I said, hey, I've got an idea for an email. I'm not sure exactly how to construct the wording on this, but here are the bullet points that I want to include. Can you help me? And with like a couple hours later, he'll have an email in my inbox that I can use and I don't even have to spend time researching or figuring it out. He's already figured it out for me. So that's another thing that I really enjoy is the relationships that you get from forming closer partnerships with the vendors that you've cut down to. Because once you cut down and you spend more money with your current vendors, you start to find that it ends up being a bigger relationship than you thought, and they can help you a lot further.
Yeah, and in case David Lowitz is not your regional sales manager at TradePending, you can reach out to the marketing team. You can reach out to your sales manager. We're always willing to help here. And so, final question here, 1 minute left. What's left for the rest of this year? What are you thinking? What are you working on?
I'm still working on taking us through this digital transformation that you mentioned. So that's taking a lot. I think that most people are trying to wrap their head around right now what's life after COVID going to be like. So as markets start to return to normal, or to somewhat normal, people are wondering, and we're just trying to see what the fallout's going to be here of how many people are going to, this is the new way they buy, or this is the new way they like to shop. I think for at least a great portion of this year, outside of waiting for vehicles from this chip malfunction era that we've had going on, is going to be analyzing the new data and seeing how people start buying as the market returns to normal. In my opinion, once you go there, it's hard to go back. So it's just going to be interesting taking a look at this market from an objectional standpoint and seeing where we're heading.
Absolutely. All right. With that, we are pretty much approaching the end of this whole show. And if you've made it this far, please go to bit.ly/peepbird and we will mail you this bird that you actually see here in the picture. I'm actually sharing my screen. Can you see that, Mason? I am.
Yeah,
okay,
I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, wobbly bird, that's our mascot, and we'll be happy to mail you one. So with that, we have hit our 30-minute mark. Mason, thank you so much for taking time with us today and sharing everything you've learned over the past year.
Yeah, no problem at all. And if anyone has any specific questions, they're welcome to email me and I'll help them out best I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Mason.